I am here with Dr. David Antonini, who is a philosophy professor at Clemson University. Hi, David. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, we have a ton of experiences as human beings. We have romantic experiences, traumatic, religious, virtual experiences. What is a political experience?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Yeah, no, that's it's a good place to start. It's obviously a really big question. So I what I understand by the term political experience, as I understand it, in its most is as I can sort of define it most simply, is that it is a conversation between two distinct yet equal people. Um, and I think that there needs to be a couple of things that I want to sort of be present in that conversation. I think that the communication should be what I would call horizontal, which is to say that we're actually interested in speaking to one another and in the sort of in the genuine sense of like it's a genuine engagement between two people. So that's why I say horizontal instead of sort of vertical, which I think would imply a kind of hierarchy. And so horizontal sort of implies that we're coming at this at the same level. Um, and I think that the thing we're engaged in, that conversation, is kind of what philosophers like to say sometimes is an end in itself, which is to say that it is we don't necessarily need to leave the conversation in agreement. Um, and we don't need to necessarily do anything as a result of the conversation. I just think that there's something that is contained, that there is value in the exchange itself. So that's a few things that I understand by the term.
So, it sounds like almost anybody, any human, I guess, who's old and mature enough could have this thing you're calling a political experience. But I'm wondering if they have to be distinct but equal and have a horizontal way about them. So it sounds like nobody could have a political experience with just anybody, right? You couldn't have one with your boss or your child.
Well, that's a good, yeah, I think that's an important clarification. I mean, I think what I mean is when I say horizontal, I guess what I mean is I think often in political conversation or political discussion, we often think of ourselves as occupying different ideological positions, or we belong to a certain party, of course. And so I think the reason I emphasized horizontal, and especially that word two, is that I don't want us speaking against each other or at each other, I guess, or some other, I guess those are prepositions. The two really captures the idea that I'm genuinely interested in listening. And so I I can't think of the best way to make the distinction at the moment, but no, I think that obviously, quite literally, like somebody could occupy a position of authority over you and you could still speak to them as long as you're not interested. I think often we enter political conversation interested in being right. Um, and I'm just less interested in that in what I'm trying to describe.
So, is it just changing the subject a little bit? Is it possible for, say, a 25-year-old living in America to go through their entire life without having a political experience?
Um,
Say more specifically, like somebody doesn't do social media, doesn't watch the news or read the news or engage in politics.
yeah,
Are they skipping out on a political experience, or are those things unrelated?
I mean, I think that because of the specific way that I'm conceiving of it, I think that everyone either should have one um, or has and maybe didn't realize it. So because I'm trying to sort of, I like to think of what I'm doing as defamiliarizing what we understand by politics. I think to sort of broaden it to such an extent that I'm saying it's a conversation between two people about something that's of shared concern to them. I'm pretty convinced that most of us have probably had that experience at some point, but maybe we didn't call it political. So yeah, so the answer is I think even if you're not interested in the traditional things we associate with being political, like reading the news, for example, I still think that because I am conceiving of it as like a form of our experience right alongside the other kinds of experiences you mentioned, because I'm conceiving of it alongside those experiences, um, then I think everyone has access to it if they want it.
Yeah, Dr. Antonini, why is it so important that we have political experiences? Is it because we're human? Is it like somehow
Oh,
fundamental to humanity?
I think so. I think that, I mean, that's part of what I'm trying to. So, yeah, I mean, I think insofar as like there's this other sort of language that I use, and I'm, getting it from Hannah Arendt, who's the sort of a strong influence on my own thinking, that this condition that we find ourselves in that she calls plurality, and that I think she's right about, that we are plural human beings, that um, we are distinct in the sense that all of us have a unique perspective on the world, but yet we're equal in the sense that we're all human. And so, insofar as we find ourselves as plural, I think all of us have a desire to express our own unique perspective on the world and to have that understood by others. And then, so insofar as that is part of what it means to be human, insofar as part of what it means to be human is to want to express our unique perspective on the world and share it with others, I think that that is fundamental to our existence.
Is there something more than just jargon that we're getting from Hannah Arendt's work? Is she somehow special in one of her theories, or why should we read her work?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that she is tapping into um I mean, yes, there is jargon, but I also think that the jargon captures something that is correct. Um, so the reason that I like her is that she is trying to say that the average person can have experiences of politics, and that what we mean by politics doesn't have to be restricted to, I don't know, politics in like an electoral sense, in terms of, who we're voting for and things like that, that she is interested in understanding, without being redundant, she is interested in understanding politics as a form of our experience. And that's why I think her thought is valuable, because for me, her thought is so different than any other political philosopher that I read. And that's why she spoke to me so much. And that's why I've continued to pursue her thought.
So I'm wondering if you could help me understand what public space really is. You're talking about political experiences between two distinct people, and now with the internet, we could be engaging with others on the other side of the planet. Is
Mhm.
that public space? Could we have political experiences with people over the internet? Does it have to be in person? Can you kind of help me understand what you have in mind as far as like public space goes?
Yeah, it's another term that I use in the title of the book, obviously, that you're or that you were basing this conversation on. Um, I mean, I think that public space can refer to like a physical location. I don't think it has to. I think public space can just refer to a possibility that can be opened up through conversation itself. And so it doesn't have to refer to like a physical space. It can actually just refer to the possibility of a public space opening up between us when we engage in a conversation. But but the question about the internet, yeah, I mean, I think for obviously a while, I think people have had to ask. This term public space is obviously not unique. It's not something that I came up with. It's it's a term that's, you know, somewhat nebulous when it comes to thinking about politics. And so yes, so the internet obviously problematizes or questions our assumptions about what public space is. And I think that insofar as the internet allows experiences like we're having right now to be possible, yeah, I mean, I think that I'm okay with thinking of this as a public space. I'm not. I suppose there are other things you can do on in the virtual space that I would not be as I would be not be ready to label them as political experiences.
It sounds like you're gesturing that what you mean by political experience is ideally face to face, not virtual. Is that right?
A little bit,
Can
a
you
little bit,
explain that?
yeah. So like in my yeah, so I contend that that I think that there's something that is so qualitatively unique about the real time give and take in the moment experience. So when again, we can approximate that now, but there's still something that's not, you know, that I think anyone would recognize is not quite the same, even in this, even in what we're doing now. So I do think there's some level of physical presence that is, you know, I'm not sure I'd want to go so far as to say it's necessary, but you know, I do think it's really important that I say something to you, you say something to me, and we react in real time, you know, and that's really important. So this obviously, again, this approximates it, but not, I don't know, not
Like you post something and then later I reply.
yeah, so there is that, right. So yeah, so those are like there are those kinds of things that we can do in the virtual space that I would be less, yeah, I would be less comfortable thinking of as genuine experiences. But I think what we're doing now, it gets at it better than other activities that we can do online.
So, thinking about political experiences in public space, is there anything that you'd like to add that I haven't asked you about yet?
Yeah, I mean, I I'm trying to think. I mean, I think that one of the things that I do in the book is to try and think about like right now what kinds of things are going on in the world that would you know, look like a political experience. And of course the conversation is one element of it, but of course I also think that there are going to be other kinds of political, and so like I think like protest is another sort of important political experience that can be had. And so one of the things I do talk about in the book is thinking about like how Black Lives Matter emerged, you know, last summer during, you know, a pandemic, and how sort of remarkable it is to think that this, you know, it would obviously existed prior to that, but the fact that it emerged and became so strong over seemingly overnight during a global public health emergency was quite remarkable. And so I just thinking about what has happened in our own political climate over the last, in recent memory. And that for me captures something that I wrote in the book that I think Arendt would find compelling as well. So that's just kind of one sort of thing I guess to think about, like a contemporary example that's on my mind.
So with this example of protesting, it seems like two people could have a political experience without knowing each other. Like if you show up and I show up and we're here.
I think so.
Okay, we
Yeah,
don't.
I think so. I don't think it requires us to know each other. I think that one of the spontaneity of political experience, the fact that it can kind of spring up spontaneously is, I think, certainly it's one of its compelling features, but it's also potentially one of the things that's maybe a little bit scary about it.
So let me just make sure I have this idea clear. You're saying that for the political experience, one of the conditions is that we are equals, but we don't need to know that we're equals.
No, I think that, I think that, like, we have to assume.
Mm.
It's a commitment that it's something we have to be committed to. We don't have to necessarily formally agree that we're equals, but it's something we should be committed to as a condition of engaging in politics with each other. And by equal, all I mean is human, I suppose, and that's really all I mean. But I don't. Again, that has. I don't mean it in like a human rights kind of way. Or I don't mean it in a kind of moral way, but I just mean it in, we assume that each other speaks using language, and that we're going to understand, that we're going to speak and use communication that each other recognizes. I suppose that might be the best way to think about it.
So was my example inappropriate when I was asking about whether a boss and an employee, or a mother and a child, is that wrong to think about that? Because that's like a social hierarchy there.
Is it wrong? In what sense is it wrong?
Like I was thinking, maybe you mean we need to be intellectually equal.
No, no, I don't think that's necessary. No,
Okay.
I don't think that's necessary. I just mean, no, equal. It's not the easiest thing to, I suppose, define. Equality is such a huge philosophical concept, of course. But I'm trying to get at, in a basic sense, that when I approach a conversation, I assume you're capable of basic human communication the same way that I am. So that's really all I mean. But again, I don't know if that might have implications that maybe I'm not aware of. That.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.